I said the originals have not been preserved. We have copies. Apostles and prophets were inspired, but I already mentioned we don't have the originals. We have copies. Okay, he complained that Luke was a historian and not an eyewitness. I thought I made it clear that that was pretty good news. Yes, we have eyewitnesses, but we also have a historian. It's a variety of literature. Probably what happened is it was an incident independent of the book of John that had been handed down in the church, and one of the monks and scribes finally gave it a happy home, and there was disagreement. But just because there's disagreement where to place something doesn't mean it didn't happen. You got to remember, all kinds of people wrote about Jesus. We happen to have 4 of the Gospels. Maybe more will be discovered someday. Not the Gospel of Thomas. That's a bunch of, well, we won't get into that right now. But that's not the real Thomas that wrote that. Copies. Can we trust the copies? Again, it's like piecing dinosaur bones back together. If you don't have the originals, yes, copies can make mistakes, but the more amount of manuscripts you have, you proportionately decrease the amount of mistakes. Again, the scribes, the monks, they were not inspired. Sometimes Christians do stupid things. There were times when, like the ending of Mark, which probably doesn't belong at the end of Mark, and the middle of John, or John 8 probably doesn't belong there, but it belongs somewhere. They were around for a long time. They were blessing people. It was handed down. People just didn't know where to put it. Now, occasionally there is a verse that doesn't belong there. Sometimes scribes would add things, and that's a problem.
Let me tell you now what I think about this entire situation, which is that we cannot know whether the Gospels have been preserved accurately through the ages, and I'm going to try and illustrate with you by explaining how it worked. Take the Gospel of Mark. Whenever Mark was written, say it was written in the year 65 or in the year 70, in the city of Rome, say, I don't know where it was made. Whoever wrote Mark put it in circulation, and somebody copied the Gospel of Mark. Then somebody copied that copy, and somebody copied the copy of the copy. Then somebody copied the copy of the copy of the copy of the copy. And we don't have any of those copies. Everybody who copied the text made mistakes. Our first surviving copy of Mark probably dates to around the year 220 A.D. That is, 150 years after Mark was first produced. Our first complete copy of Mark comes from the year 350, about 280 years after Mark. We have lots of copies from later times. From thousands of years, if 1,000 years after Mark, we get lots of copies. When you compare all of these copies with one another, they all differ from one another. And what is striking is that the earlier you go to look at the manuscripts, the more differences you find. The earliest copies have the most mistakes.